Every single person that's clicked on this video knows exactly who Manchester United are. Chances are you even know a lot about the situation they're in, and that's why you're interested in rebuilding them. Compared to some of my other videos, I'm not going to spend a minute or two describing the situation the club's in. Manchester United can possibly finish in the top 4 this season. It's not looking likely. They would need to catch up 4 points and a game in hand over Arsenal and a couple of points over Spurs too, but it is definitely possible that they end up in Europe. You might be wondering, why would a top 4 English team need a rebuild? They're already probably in the top 10 best teams in the entire world. Well, Manchester United really haven't been performing how they should be with the amount of money they've been spending and the amount of wages they have spent every single month. So what you need to do is rebuild the club, make it successful, and use the money that's being put in to good effect and make Manchester United the best team in England and possibly the best team in Europe. The way I see it, you have 3 different paths for rebuilding. You can either rebuild like Arsenal and Barcelona have done recently, you can rebuild how Manchester City did after Pellegrini left in 2016, or you can rebuild how Real Madrid did in 2019. We're going to have a look at all 3 of these different options, starting with the Arsenal and Barcelona style rebuild, which was more of a youth-focused kind of rebuild with a former player as their manager. Of course, Arteta and Xavi both played for Arsenal and Barcelona. So what they both did, they both sold or released almost every single big earner who didn't fit into their system. People like Aubameyang, who of course went from Arsenal to Barcelona, he didn't fit into the way that Arsenal wanted to play. So instead they have Lacazette or they have Martinelli up front on a much lower wage than what Aubameyang is on. They're heavily academy focused as well. Some of the best players in both squads came through the respective academy. So Saka, for example, on the wing for Arsenal, Pedri, Smith-Rowe and Gavi, these are really good players with incredible ceilings, and they've come through the academy and cost very little in money. The good thing for Manchester United is they have a reputation for actually growing this way already. They've had at least 1 youth graduate in the first team for over 4,000 consecutive matches, which I believe goes back all the way to 1937. Of course, there's been 2 big generations that have all come through at the same time. The Busby Babes is probably the most famous, although of course the class of 92 is a lot more recent. People like Duncan Edwards really could have changed the world of football if the tragic events in Munich hadn't taken place. What you need to do is try and make another one of these generations come through. To quote Alex Ferguson, "I have always considered the player you produce to be better than the one you buy." And if you want to do an Arsenal-Barcelona youth-focused rebuild with Manchester United, that's exactly the motto that you need to take. If you've produced a player, you need to focus on this guy more than if you've bought one in. You don't have to be purely academy, of course. Arsenal have spent a lot of money recently. People like Ben White, Odegaard, Ramsdale and Tomiyasu, they've all been really integral to how Arsenal have played and their slow improvement over the course of the season. And there's no reason that Manchester United couldn't have competed for this kind of player. They were all in the 70 to 80 range, and they all have potential to go over 85. This is the kind of player that you need to be focusing on with Manchester United. There are still some very similar players to this out there that you can sign in Season 1. Demiral and Ronald Araujo have both been linked in real life, and Tchouameni and Mikel Elise are both also in this kind of range, both young and both very much affordable for Manchester United. Personally, I would say this younger player rebuild is probably the most fun of the 3 options. But the second option is the Manchester City one, which focused on getting the right man in the exact right place for the club. It focused on hiring the best backroom staff to begin with. First of all, it was Txiki Begiristain and then Pep Guardiola, who are both elite at their roles. Of course, one of them's a sporting director and one of them's a manager, so you'll be taking the place of Pep in this rebuild. The staff recognised which areas of the squad was weak. The first season, this was the defence and the wings. So what they did was instantly splash the cash on John Stones and Leroy Sané. They weren't the best in the world, but what they were is effective and young. 2 things that Manchester United really need in their squad. The year after, they spotted a weakness was in the defence now. So John Stones was joined by Emerick Laporte, Mendy, Kyle Walker and Ederson in goal. So you'll have to analyse the United squad well and find weak points and notice which areas will be weak in the future. For example, you're starting out with Manchester United and you notice at striker you have Ronaldo and Cavani. They're 34 and 36 years old, so they probably won't be at the club for too many more years. What you need to do is start looking for potential long-term striker. Even if you don't sign them until season 2, it's exactly what Manchester City would be doing. It's what made Man City so good, the joined up long-term thinking. Rebuilding this way will take a good bit of squad knowledge, but you can quickly run through your entire squad on FIFA in under 10 minutes. Just write down who you think is weak, if there's a backup in your squad already that could eventually fill that role, and then figure out what kind of player you would want in that role in your system. Another example is defensive midfield. It's a role that's famously weak at Manchester United. You've got Matic, McTominay and Fred, who probably aren't good enough in real life, although Fred could probably be in that role on FIFA. You've also got Donny van der Beek and Pogba, who can play here, but probably you want them further forwards. So what would Man City do? They'd have a short list of players that fit the style, and they would be ready to replace this player 2 seasons ago. If you need a destroyer, top of your list would be someone like Tchouaméni that I mentioned earlier. Maybe if you wanted a playmaker as your defensive midfielder, you'd be looking at players like Ruben Neves. The goal of this rebuild would be really plan well and plan early. Use the rebuild United to finally get back to the top of Manchester, then England, and then the world. The third option for your rebuild style could be like Real Madrid. When they lost Ronaldo, it did feel like it could be something they never come back from fully. He was averaging over a goal a game and an assist in every 3 matches, so Madrid had to decide how they would rebuild their attack for the next generation. The season before Ronaldo left, they'd planned already, signing Vinicius Jr. for £40 million, but it would be tough for an 18-year-old to replace him. So what Madrid decided to do was splash the cash on multiple players, hoping one would work out and be somewhere near as valuable as Ronaldo was to the attack. They signed Eden Hazard as the big name replacement, but also Luka Jovic and Rodrigo for a combined $200 million. It was a gamble and over $250 million if you include Vinicius Jr. However, it was calculated. This big expenditure gave them really good depth that they're still using to this day. On the right, sometimes Rodrigo comes in. On the left, it's always Vinicius. Hazard doesn't really play too much anymore, and they've still got older players like Gareth Bale and Benzema in there that can still perform at quite a good level. How would this rebuild work? Well, you need to sign big names. This is how Manchester United have tried to rebuild since Alex Ferguson have retired in 2013. If you don't consider age too much, if a player is good enough, they're a target. No matter if they're 21 or 35, you can get some pretty interesting players in your squad. Likewise, as long as you can afford them and they'd improve your team, they're worth shortlisting at the very least. For example, if you need a new striker, maybe avoid that Erling Haaland, who's not quite as good, and go straight for Harry Kane because he's more effective in the Premier League and already proven. You need a new anchor in midfield. Don't try and develop Tchouaméni, just go straight for Declan Rice because he starts out a little bit better. This isn't strictly how Real Madrid operate, but to replace a big name, you have to bring in a big name. If Pogba leaves in the first year summer, maybe splash the cash on a Milinkovic-Savic, someone who's been a big name in Italian football for a long time. This kind of rebuild could be really fun, provided you're spending the right money on the right player. Because of their size, United are one of the only teams where this style of rebuild or this style of play is actually encouraged. It's how they operate in real life, and almost no player would refuse going to Manchester United unless they were already at a Bayern, a Real Madrid or a Barcelona. This is how they operate in real life, so why not have a little bit of fun with your career mode, try and rebuild Manchester United and become the new Alex Ferguson. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it at all. If you're a Manchester United fan or you've played them in the past, make sure you comment below who you would recommend signing, because the chances are you know a lot more about Manchester United than I do, given that I don't really support Manchester United at all. So thank you for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Any suggestions for clubs I could do something like this on in the future, please do let me know. And I'll see you very soon for another video. Thank you and goodbye.